Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. The team will be taking you through our live technical demo exploring VITESSENCE TEX, our new range of textured pea and faba bean proteins. We would like to apologise for the technical issues last week, and we're very happy you could join us again today. So my name is Declan Rooney. I'm the Strategic Marketing Manager for our savoury and plant-based category, and I'll be moderating today's session. If you have any questions or comments, please put them in the question section on the right-hand side. Just so you know, questions will come up as anonymous unless you manually type in your name. We'll be having a Q&A session at the end of the webinar, and some of my colleagues will be on hand to answer the questions in the chat during the webinar. So looking at the agenda, I'll briefly take you through the product introduction and the market landscape. I'll then pass over to our technical team. We have Catherine, Virginia, and Kevin, and they'll be taking you through a case study and provide you with a technical overview of our VITESSENCE TEX product range. And as I said, this will be followed by a Q&A session. So joining us today from our technical team, we have Catherine Pierschak, who is our ingredient innovation manager for plant-based proteins. We have Virginia Clifford, who's a technical service manager within our savory category team, and Kevin Adler, who's our senior culinologist for EMEA. So the three products we've launched under our new VITESSENCE TEX brand are VITESSENCE TEX Mince 101, which is a textured pea protein. We have VITESSENCE TEX Mince 301, which is a textured faba bean protein. And we have VITESSENCE TEX Chunk 101, which is a textured pea protein. All of them are 65% protein content on a dry basis. And really this textured protein range allow you to formulate non-soy based products or gluten-free meat alternatives. So if we take a look at the protein bases used in meat alternatives within the product launches over the last 5 years, wheat and soy remain the most prominent, and there's no surprise there. What is very interesting is the prevalence of pea protein, and you can see in fourth position, pea protein is becoming more prominent. And it also has a high growth rate, within new product launches of 39%. So it's becoming more and more used in new meat alternative product launches. So yeah, innovation with pea protein and meat alternatives is really gaining momentum. And really we can see on the right some really leading brands really use pea protein within their products. So on this slide, here are some of our consumer insights from a recent consumer research carried out by Ingredion, specifically on meat alternatives. And some of these were presented in our recent Plant Possible campaign. So consumers specified taste and texture as the most important factors when selecting a meat alternative. So we do need to understand a little more what they mean by taste and texture, whether it's, a meat-like texture or whether it's perhaps more softer and succulent and maybe perceived as healthier. The next two factors highlighted were clean label, so everything around more recognizable ingredients or having less ingredients on pack. Moving on to the right was protein type. So lentil protein was number 1, followed by chickpea protein, and then pea protein in third. So in terms of preference, consumers are very open to pea protein in meat alternatives today. So with that, I'd like to hand over to Virginia, Catherine, and Kevin, who will take you through a case study looking into the development of a plant-based nugget based on pea protein.
Great, thanks, Declan. Hi, Catherine. Hi, Kevin. I wanted to share with you a customer brief from a meeting I had last week with a company called Vegan Bites, and to see what we could potentially offer them. The customer would like to create a plant-based chicken nugget, in inverted commas, which is vegan. They've previously reviewed our veggie recipes that contain the egg white. However, they now need to move to a vegan option for their customer.
That's fantastic. We recently worked on removing the egg white from our nuggets. So what other requirements does your customer have?
They want to be as close as possible to chicken meat, and they want to move away from soy-based proteins. Clean label as far as possible, with a reduction in the unnecessary hydrocolloids. It needs to be process tolerant as well. The product's going to be coated, fried, and frozen, and then reconstituted in the oven. Their number one priority, however, is around the eating quality of the product. So the clean labeling and the reduction of unnecessary hydrocolloids comes as a secondary part to this brief.
Sounds. Are they having a specific benchmark in mind that they would like to achieve?
They've not stated any specific product, Catherine, from the market, but they preferably would like to be as close to that real chicken meat as possible in texture and eating quality. So if we can get it as close to formed chicken meat, then I think the customer would be happy.
That's a challenge, but we made some great developments in vegan formulation to overcome those challenges, actually. So by removing animal protein from your recipe, you have two different aspects. The one is on the consumer side. You would like to get very good flavor, mouthfeel, maintain juiciness. You still want to have that particular texture and bite, but also the nutritional parts are very important. And you mentioned cleaner label, shorter ingredients list are important, as well as how it looks like in the end. But also on the manufacturing end, you want to have a gel texture, a certain cohesiveness. Processability will be key. So all of stickiness and processing, shaping, that will be important. That includes also water holding, but also fat release. If you talk about heating processes, deep frying, all of that is important. And of course, the stability over shelf life. You can imagine by removing animal protein from your recipe, you cannot just put in one ingredient to achieve that. So you have to use different ingredients and a combination of them. So taking a look at a nugget, how that looks like, or what we combine is you have a textured vegetable protein, often referred to as TVP, which is actually a brand name. We call it SVP, so structured vegetable protein. That gives you that texture and bite, so a certain chewiness, fibrous texture, and that's the main component of your meat alternatives. And then you can combine it with other ingredients to give you that overall formulation and the texture you would like to have. You can use plant-based proteins to add on the nutritional side, but also on the functionality. Helps with freeze-thaw stability and also binds water, as well as starches and fibers. So you add those to help you binding and bringing it all together, help you over shelf life, help you with the cohesiveness in processing, but also in bite. And hydrocolloids are essential if you remove all of the animal proteins. They help you with mouthfeel and juiciness, but also with yield and stability over shelf life. And of course, you have to have other ingredients in there to just make it all a complete product. So does your customer actually have any preferences when we talk about pulses that we could use?
No, they haven't stated a preference, only the requirement to remove the soy protein. So I think a pea or a faba protein will fit the brief for them.
That's good. We actually have 3 different products they can select from. We have 2 textured protein based on pea and 1 on faba, and they come in different formats. So we have 1 chunk product based on pea protein, and we have 2 minced products, 1 based on pea, 1 based on faba bean, and they can all be used for different applications. So they bring different textures, they can be used in different processes, and are quite versatile, actually. We've recently took a video of how they are manufactured. Have you actually seen that one, Jin?
No, I haven't. Can we take a look at it, please?
Sure. So Jin, you just saw that we can make fantastic burgers out of our products, but we can also make fantastic nuggets. The first step is actually to choose the right textured protein for your product.
Okay, so looking at this, which option do you think is best for them to create a form chicken type product?
So we are going for pea, and I would suggest the chunk product simply because you have a bit more versatility on how you use it, how big pieces would you like to have. You can either use them as they are, you can blend them, you can grind them, and your customer has flexibility on the final texture they would like to achieve. So what they would then do is to hydrate it, to process it a bit further and combine it with other ingredients that will give you that overall texture, as I mentioned before. Does your customer actually have a specific equipment that they are using for that?
Yeah, they have a RoboCoop in their test lab, which they know replicates their manufacturing process pretty well. So that's what they use in the MPD lab.
Fantastic. That's also what we were using in the kitchen, and we have various ways on how to remove egg white and to make a nugget vegan. So let's take a look at how we can achieve that. As said, removing animal protein is challenging, egg white in particular. When you move that out, you have to replace it by alternative combinations of ingredients to give you that bind, processability. And there are two different ways to do that. The one is by using gluten in your formulation that gives you additional firmness and chewy texture, and it supports that binding and structuring of your nugget. But you can also go gluten-free. You need, however, a balanced system of ingredients to give you that binding, to increase the firmness, and to get to a good finished product. Does your customer actually have any concerns about gluten in their nuggets?
They didn't state any particular allergen restrictions when we had the conversation, and no direct sort of point around removing the gluten. However, I think if we have the two options available to show them, then I think that gives them a great choice with their final customer.
Very good. I know that Kevin has been working on the gluten version in the Idea Lab. Should we take a look?
Yeah, great. Great.
Hi, thanks, Catherine. Hi, Jin. Welcome to our Idea Labs here in Hamburg. And as Catherine mentioned, we're going to work on our gluten-containing nugget right now. So we're going to first start off with our VITESSENCE TEX chunk. And as you can see, this is the one that we've been speaking about here. It's got quite a nice size. And we're just going to simply hydrate this. I'm just going to add this to a bag right now. This could be done in a tumbler. And then add some water. We'll leave that for around 5 minutes minimum to let that hydrate nicely. Okay. Next, what we're going to start to do is look at our binding system. So the binding system that we're going to look at today contains gluten. So we'll add that to our mixer. We're going to add to that also our seasonings, some chicken flavor, and also Novation Uno 190, which is a functionalized potato starch, which is going to be important in the matrix. I'm just going to give that a quick blend together before we add our water. We're going to add that water and let that come together for a little while. And as you can see, Jin, that's starting to make like little couscous style. Couscous style ball.
Oh, I see. Yep. So is it possible then to overmix at this stage, Kevin?
Yeah, you really want to be careful. You don't want to blend it too far. I mean, at the end of the day, it is gluten. But what's really important is getting the water to gluten ratio correct. If you add too much water, if you add too much water, you're going to end up with more of a dough. And that's something we don't want, because it will make it very difficult to get the SBP and the methylcellulose found into that mix. So we've just processed that a little bit, and then we're going to add our methylcellulose emulsion. It's just made with methylcellulose, oil, and iced water. Before we add our hydrated textured vegetable protein. I'm just going to blend that together. We've got a nice homogeneous mass. Part of the great thing about using the TEX, the chunk, is that we can really customize how fine or how coarse you really want the mix to be. So here we've given this around 15 seconds. As you can see, that's starting to come together now. Quite well. I'm just going to give that a little bit longer so we still get a nice fibrous textured mix. Okay. As we look again now, after that's come together, you can really see that's nice and homogeneous. It's not sticky. You see?
Yeah.
And then we will then form and shake and steam before we freeze it, coat it, and then refreeze, and then we can reconstitute in the oven.
Okay, so what's the benefit of the steaming step in that process?
So the benefit is, great question. So the benefit is to functionalize the methylcellulose, but to also functionalize the Novation Uno 190, which is going to bind any of that water that may be released during the cooking step. It also makes it a firm product so that you can treat it and handle it much easier. And I'll just show you now some of the finished nuggets from the oven. So Jim, these are all finished for you. I'm just going to break one open. Extremely hot. So Jim, I wonder if you can see that texture in there. Is that something you think the customer is looking for?
I think they look really good. I'd be happy to demo those to the customer for sure. Great job. Thanks, Kevin.
Not a problem. Thanks, Jim.
So Catherine, then, that recipe that contains gluten, what would the gluten-free recipe look like, and how would it differ?
Good question. So to answer that, maybe we look at the gluten-containing recipe first. We have different building blocks, different functionalities that you also get from those combinations. We always start with the VITESSENCE texture structured protein that's hydrated. That's the biggest part of your recipe. That gives you that meat-like texture. And then we have used gluten in combination with our potato starch Novation Uno 190. The gluten here plays a very important role. It binds water in the cold stage, so it improves that processability. It reduces stickiness, but it also gives you firmness and a certain bite at the hot stage after heating. The Novation Uno 190 comes in to help you process it easier. It also binds once heated. That was the steaming step. And it gives a nice succulence because meat alternatives tend to be a bit on the dry side. And the Novation Uno 190 is an excellent product to help you with that. And then, of course, since we have removed any egg white or animal protein, we need a gelling agent. That's why Kevin was working with the methylcellulose pre-emulsion. And methylcellulose in this recipe gives you that gelation, firm texture at the eating temperature that you're looking for. And then what you need to add is still a bit of water, fat, and flavorings to make it all taste nice. I'm afraid I could not hear you, Jin.
Sorry about that. What are the compromises when we go to a gluten-free recipe? Catherine, I can't hear you either.
Very good. We're all on mute. So by removing the gluten, you have to find different combinations of ingredients. You still maintain your structured protein for that, but you combine different ingredients to give you that functionality of gluten back. So we maintain the methylcellulose as the main gelling agent to give you that bite once it's heated. And we have then selected different products, a potato starch and a potato fiber. The potato starch is actually a cold water swelling in this case. So it helps bind the water in the cold stage, just as the gluten did before, to help improve processability, reduce stickiness. And we have combined it with the potato fiber that also binds the water at the cold stage. So it helps with processability as well. But it also gives you an added bite and firmness once it is heated. We've combined it all into a system called Simplistica A1210. The beauty of that recipe is actually it's simpler than the gluten one because you have an all-in process. You don't have to go through different steps and you can combine it. Though you have a challenge by removing the gluten, actually manufacturing is a bit easier. And I know that Kevin has also been working on the gluten-free version in the kitchen. If you like, we can take a look at that as well.
Great. Can we do that, Kevin? Can we do that, Kevin?
We sure can. Hi, Jin. So welcome back to the Idea Lab. So now we're going to look at making the gluten-free version. And as Catherine alluded to, this is a bit more simpler because we're just going to use an all-in method. So we're going to take our food system, our Simplistica MA1210, and add that directly to our mixer, along with the spices and flavor, and as well some oil. Before we then add our ice cold water. Now, while that's moving on and forming an emulsion, we've prehydrated the VITESSENCE TEX chunk, just like we did in the previous step, so that it is fully hydrated. I'll just take a quick look here. You can see the emulsion is starting to form. Looking good. I'm just going to give that around a minute and a half so that the ingredients start to functionalize before we then add our hydrated VITESSENCE TEX. Okay, so that's a nice emulsion there. We're going to add the VITESSENCE TEX chunk for adding some more here. And again, that's one of the great things around using the VITESSENCE TEX chunk is you can really customize how fine or how coarse you want the mix to be. So that's at around 15 seconds, 10, 15 seconds. I'm just going to give this a quick push round so that everything's all nicely mixed together. As you can see, that's a bit more simpler for the customer as everything's all in the one process. We're not needing to make a methylcellulose emulsion in the first place. We're just needing to, for the gluten step, and just do everything in one. Perfect. So, Jane, I'll let you have a quick look in here. 1 second. Perfect. So, Jane, you can see here, it's a little bit softer than the original one, the one containing.
It looks a bit stickier as well. Would that be correct? Is that what you would expect?
Yeah, I mean, it is a little bit stickier, it's a little bit softer. I mean, we're making this directly now, and we can also play around with the cohesiveness of the mix depending on what your customer's needing. But I just want to show a quick example that it's not too sticky. Yeah, so if it takes some of the mix and just give it a quick press together, we're forming this. You can see very soft. So although the mix is softer, it's not that sticky to touch. And what we would do again is just the same as we did last time. So we would form this, we would steam it, freeze it, coat it, refreeze it, and then take it from the oven to reconstitute. And I'll just get some from the oven right now. So, Jim, just while I'm plating it up now, you can probably see the nuggets here. How do they look? Nice and golden. Now gluten-free batter. Again, these are very hot. I'm just going to break one to the side so you can see how juicy and succulent they are.
Kevin, they look great. I'd be really happy to show those as well to the customer. They look a bit slightly softer, but I suppose that gives us two texture options for them to choose between.
Yeah, exactly, Jim. That's exactly right. They're a little softer, but they're still juicy and succulent and hopefully perfect for your customer.
Great stuff. I think we've got two great recipes there that we can show to the customer, and it shows different textures, and we've got different recipes with and without gluten, and both of them are vegan, and we've removed the soy. So I think that's really positive. And I'll share these recipes with Vegan Bites. When I get any feedback, I'll be sure to come back to you guys and feed that back into you as well. But really appreciate the demonstration and the technical work behind this. So thanks, guys, for sharing all of that with me.
You're welcome, Jen.
Jen, anytime.
Great, thanks.
Great. Thanks, everyone. Really good example how our VITESSENCE text can be used in application, and also showing your great technical knowledge how to formulate with these textured pulse proteins. So before we take some questions, I just want to bring your attention to some supporting materials just below the video. So there's the link to our fact sheet for the VITESSENCE text range. So you can find more information and all documentation for the three products. And we also have an infographic attached below. And that's just showcasing some of our highlights of the consumer insight study we did on meat alternatives last year. So if you'd like any more details on any of the information, our contact details are on the page, or you can fill out the form below at the bottom of the page if you have any questions or if you required any samples. So with that, we'll just have a look. I'm just going to take a look to see if there are any questions. I see a few, which is great. Okay, so maybe Catherine, if you could take the first one, please. Could we use mince protein in nuggets as well? So I know we used a chunk in these. Could we use the mince products as well?
Thank you, Declan. Yes, we can. So we have chosen the chunk because it gives you more versatility in terms of how fine or how coarse you would like to keep it. With the mince, you have less freedom, but they are perfectly fine to be used in nuggets as well. Both of them, faba and pea.
Great. Thanks, Catherine. So the next one, maybe I'm just reading it. You talked around cohesiveness. Kevin, maybe you could answer this one. So you talked about cohesiveness. How do you improve this?
Great question, Declan. So it depends on what you mean by cohesiveness. If we're talking about cohesiveness in the mouth, or if we're talking about cohesiveness in the processing, we've got a wide range of different ingredients that we can incorporate into a solution for our customers. But there we would just need to get a bit more detail on what you're needing from a processing aspect. Does that answer your question, Declan?
Yeah, no, that's great. Thanks, Kevin. Okay, so Simplistica. Yeah, I'll go in order then, Jin, so you're not feeling left out. I know you can answer this. What is Simplistica MA, which you mentioned earlier? I've never heard about it.
Oh, okay. This is one of our food systems products. It's a stabilizing solution which adds the firm bite and the processability to the meat alternative recipes that we have. So it's based on methylcellulose, starch, and potato fiber.
Great. Thanks, Jane. Then maybe the next one, maybe Catherine, you could answer this, or Kevin, you can feel free to jump in. Do you have anything for vegan fish alternatives?
So from a protein perspective, yes, you can use our ingredients as well for fish alternatives to give you that fibrous texture, but you need a different combination of ingredients to give you that softer bite. We have focused today more on the chicken, which has a firmer bite. Kevin, would you like to add more to that?
No, I'd just look at maybe instead of looking at a protein source, instead of using the pea, maybe look at the faba, that's a bit more succulence, which is a bit more fish-like. But like you said, Catherine, you really need to work on that food system to get the right texture that's desired.
Yeah. So I guess it really depends on the type of fish alternative they're trying to develop as well. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the next one, there's a question, maybe Kevin, maybe you could answer. Would you be looking to replace the methyl cellulose, or if any others want to jump in, would you be looking to replace the methyl cellulose in the recipe? So in the recipes you've created.
Do you want me to take that one, Kevin, or are you? Yeah. So Kevin, feel free afterwards. But just to say that methylcellulose really is a pretty holy grail of meat alternative recipes, in the sense that it gives us that hot gelling, and we have found it very difficult to find an alternative to that as yet. In the background, globally, we're looking into how to replace methylcellulose in meat alternatives, but to date, we don't have a solution or an alternative, but it is something that's forming part of our R&D project work.
Great, thanks, Jen. So the next one, let's move now. There was one there. Let me just double check on, where is it gone? Instant starch. I can't find it. Oh yeah. Which instant starch would you suggest for cold forming?
Shall I take that one?
Yeah, go on, Kevin. I was just going to give the technical service user response of it depends. So feel free to carry on.
I think that's with the same response I would give as well. So it depends on how much water you're trying to bind, also what labeling you're wanting to have. We've got numerous instant starches and also some fibers as well that can bind water instantly. So yeah, please feel free to get in touch with your technical service representative to find the right solution. Yeah.
Okay, so it depends. Okay, moving on. Yeah, maybe Kevin, if you're unmuted, what can be used as an ingredient to obtain a color more white for nuggets?
Yeah, good question. It's depending on what your source is and where this color is coming from. What color is it you're trying to get away from? With our faba, we're a little bit lighter than pea. You can also look at removing gluten, because gluten, once it cooks, it starts to brown as well. But actual whitening products, we don't really have anything. We could maybe look at using different base viscosifiers which maybe add a bit more opacity, but for adding whiteness, we don't really have anything in our portfolio. Catherine, Jin, is there anything you'd like to add?
Right on spot.
No.
Thank you, Kevin.
Agreed.
Great. And I think we're nearly at the end of them. But I'll throw this out. Let's see what you guys think. I think this is our last question. What's your view on using enzymes to support and improve the texture? Any comments or?
That's a fair way to move ahead if you would like to use enzymes. Not everyone is happy to do that in their facility, but it is clearly an option to help structure and bind your meat alternatives. So if you are looking into that, please feel free to do that. You can use enzymes and oral proteins, for example, to increase the bind.
Great. Thanks, Catherine. Okay, I think that's nearly all of the questions answered. So thanks for all of you for answering those. That's been great and really helpful. So thanks, Jane, thanks, Catherine, and thanks, Kevin. Okay, so yeah, thank you all for attending today and all your questions that you've asked us. As said before, please reach out to us if you want any more information or any of the details, more information on the details shared. So with that, I'd like to close today's session and wishing you all a nice afternoon. Thank you.